We have an unidentified flying object.
I'm Jack Oswald, and you're listening.
This is Mr. Hammer, and you're listening to...
I'm Richard C. Hoagland, and you're listening to...
I'm Art Bell, and you're listening to Dr. J Radio Live.
We have an unidentified flying object.
Welcome back to the program. It's Beyond Reality Radio with Jason and JV. Later in the show, we're going to have Dr. Misse on, and we'll talk about what he's all about as we get closer to bringing him on. It's a fascinating story. You're going to be wowed and inspired both. Right now, however, we've got a very special guest. Dr. J is joining us. He is a radio host, also an alien UFO researcher. He's also spent a good deal of time working with Art Bell before Art's passing, and we're anxious to talk to him about all those things. Dr. J, welcome to Beyond Reality Radio. It's great to have you on tonight.
It's a pleasure to be on with you guys.
Well, thanks for coming on. We've been looking forward to this.
So let's start. Let's start by learning a little bit more about you. Tell us about yourself.
Well, I do a lot of things. I'm a skydiver. That's for one. I'm a free fall photographer. I practice law during the day. Of course, I am a researcher. I've been a researcher since 1984. And, of course, late-night radio host, just like you guys.
And when you say researcher of what? Let's let everybody know.
Ufology specifically, but I've researched everything from JFK to ghosts, you name it, anything within paranormal, because I don't really think there's such thing as conspiracy theories. I really think it's just one conspiracy. That's it, as a fact. And where every little thing is connected. I mean, from, I don't know if you guys ever heard the story of the Titanic, where it's actually the Olympic is on the bottom of the Atlantic, to 9/11, to aliens. I mean, I believe there's some sort of connection to all this because there obviously has to be something behind things, that don't make sense.
Okay.
But I think we've reached a pinnacle moment for sure.
You went on this tangent there. I sort of lost track of where you were going with Titanic and everything.
No, I wanted to cover everything as one conspiracy.
Oh, okay. Well, we've got time.
That's right.
Yeah. So, Dr. J, just let me understand this. What you're saying is there aren't many conspiracies. There's one vast conspiracy that includes all of these things. Is that what you're saying?
I believe so. After several years of research and 8 years of doing radio, that's what I've come to the conclusion. But I've also come to the conclusion that a lot of the stories that people talk about are fake, or, they're just recycled. For instance, this new story going around from people here at Contact in the Desert, Conscious Life Expo on the West Coast, they're talking about blue avians. I really don't think they're blue, big birds going around, but at the same time, apparently from someone who's actually worked there, Clifford, I believe it's Clifford Stone, if I'm not mistaken, he believes to have worked with, he alleges to have worked with the U.S. Army Crash and Retrieval, and he testified at Greer's Disclosure Project in 2001. And so he said there was 57 different species that they had documented at the time. Current estimates from some people, like Carrie Cassidy, are 250. Now, what do I believe? Show me the evidence, because after all, I am a lawyer.
Right. Well, that's a kind of a black and white profession in some ways, so I can understand why you'd want to see that evidence. But I want to back you up. We as Jason said, we've gone on a lot of different tangents here. But getting back to you, at what point did paranormal topics become an interest to you, particularly the UFO phenomena?
Okay. Well, there are several pivotal years. I'm going to start with, I just knew without a fact. First of all, my parents came here from Greece. I was the firstborn. I didn't learn to speak English till I was 4, but I already knew we weren't alone. I don't know how I knew this, but I just knew from the earliest time. I can remember Sunday school in Greek, talking about Jesus, and the first thing that popped in my head was he was an alien. And so 1984, I was, my family, typical Greeks, we own restaurants, and they had a restaurant in West Covina, California, about an hour where I am from now, which is in the infamous San Fernando Valley. And me and my brother were walking to this thrift store to look at toys, which was in the strip mall behind our restaurant. As we came out, there was a guy riding on his bike. And in those days, it was those really tight bike shorts and the helmet and all that thing. He was definitely a bike rider. So I looked up and I saw this object, and I pointed to him and I said, "Hey, mister, what's that?" He said, "A weather balloon." And I said, "No, it's not." And I remember he was so shocked at what he saw that his bike just fell over and his eyes were transfixed to the sky. And I ran inside to go find my mother to bring her out. And essentially, when we came out, I just saw the aftermath of people parked on the side of the road with the door open, 1 foot out, with their fingers pointed to the sky. When I was asked what I saw, this is what a child would say. I saw an underground cereal bowl that was made of metal. What is that? That's a dome-shaped object underground. Flash forward to 1990. Now, in the meantime, I started working at the restaurant. I was sort of a little of a math prodigy when I was young, and obviously continued through college years and into the present. And so when I was 4 years old, I was already working the cash register. My parents didn't give me an allowance. They wanted to raise me the way they did. You had to earn your way. So at 4 years old, I was happy to do it. And so flash forward to 1990. 1990, we went on a trip to Greece. And we were crossing from one village to the other. We were in the forest, so we were alone. All you could see was the headlights in front of you, and you could also see the stars and the moon. And that's it. We were in a forest, so we were alone. And I spotted it first, and essentially it was a ball with like 10 to 12 like little tails, like little balls, smaller balls following it. And it wasn't going down, but it was just going across the sky at a fairly, fast speed, no noise, and it looked like the moon, but without any craters. It was the color of the moon is the best way to describe it. Now, we didn't think anything much of it afterwards, but I just knew I saw something incredible. We get to the next village fairly late, wake up the next morning, and this is all over national media. I mean, literally, it flew across the whole country and many of the 3,200 islands. And so then flash forward to 2007. I'm in the middle of law school at this point. And I just decided, I lived across the street from the infamous Grove in Los Angeles. And I had been reading UFO magazine early on, and I've been buying from, when I was young, after I was 11 or so, I would buy from what I found in classified magazine UFO videos. And it would be everything from unsolved mysteries to strange universe to actual documentaries. And by the time I had finished spending my money with him, I cleared him out of everything he had, at least every copy of everything he had. So I've been doing that, and I've never even heard of, I read Back Coast to Coast, but I've never heard it. And I remember in 2007, a couple of things happened, really. First of all, a customer at one of the family restaurants told me, saw me read the magazine and told me, he said, "Do you believe that stuff?" And I said, "Yes, definitely." And he said, "So you must listen to Coast to Coast." I said, "With Art Bell." "Yeah, what about it? I've never heard it. Where is it?" And he tells me, it's here, KFI AM 640. And I'm like, that's great. I turn it on. It's about Bigfoot. Well, I was kind of hoping he'd hear UFO stuff because that's what I was really obsessed about. I wanted to know what their cities look like, what they look like, what the craft looks like. That was my obsession for all my life. So then I went to Barnes & Noble across the street just to buy another book. And I found this book that changed my life forever. It was called UFOs Over California, and that was written by Preston Dennett. I was blown away to how many crash and retrievals there were just in California. He's written several books, UFOs over New York, UFOs over New Mexico, UFOs over Colorado. I mean, he's working on so many to literally try to cover most of the important states. I think Arizona's in there too. It's just great collection, but it literally, other guests have said this to me, Timothy Good. There are, a conservative number, a very conservative number, is that there have been no less than 100 crash and retrievals. And the reason why, if you want to know, is what Bob Lazar predicts. But that's just a whole different point. So I asked, at the end of the book, it said, ask the author a question or reach out to him. So I wrote the company an email. They forwarded it to him. He responded. I gave him my, phone number in an email. Turns out he had the same area code as me. So I called him up, and, I was just blown away. I said, I only thought there was Kecksburg and Roswell and this and that. And he says, no, there's been more. And he was explaining to me just just a lot more than I ever knew. So,
all right. Well, let's we got to take a quick break, and then we'll come back and get more into the story. All right. You're listening to Jason and JV on Beyond Reaiity Radio. We'll be back after this.
Later in the program, we've got Dr. Misse joining us. A very, very inspirational and motivational story. You're going to really, really like hearing his story, the things he's overcome, the things he's accomplished. It's really, really amazing. We're excited to have that conversation. Right now we're talking with Dr. J, however. Dr. J is a radio host, a UFO researcher. His website is Dr. J Radio. That's just the letter J, not the word J. drjradiolive.com. And Dr. J, you were talking about a book that changed your life, and you reached out, I think it was to the author,
yes,
to talk about this thing, and it was a real pivotal point in your mindset and your life's work.
Well, essentially, after that, it took a few years before I started going to events. So I just started to meet people, and because I used to produce events, concerts specifically, I just got all their contacts. So 2012 was another very pivotal event. I was just looking at YouTube, and I came across this channel called Third Phase of the Moon, and they were interviewing this guy who said he could summon UFOs, was his claim. And he announced that they would do it that following weekend, and it was like 10 minutes from where I live. So I decided, if it's BS, I'll come home. If it's cool, I'll stay for an hour, or I'll go there for an hour and check it out. What do I have to lose? It's Saturday. So I went, and surprisingly enough, this guy would meditate, and things would appear out of nowhere. I mean, this guy would win the James Randi Prize, and there's so many great people I've met through this industry that really have proof. I mean, I think we've already reached disclosure in some sense, and I'll get to that. So then I caught something that day on my iPhone because I was there. And the reaction, I guess, caused a media storm with everybody else starting to point and look. And so that video went viral, and then they still did a whole bunch of other things. And so I became involved with Third Phase of the Moon. They're the world's largest UFO YouTube channel, 500,000 subscribers. They produce a video virtually every day. People submit all of the time. They vet them very well. I mean, some fakes have slipped through. They don't claim everything's real. They put it out there for you to test, and I've even brought Jaime Maussan from Mexico to test a few. So I essentially started doing Third Phase of the Moon radio for them. I had full autonomy of the show. They just wanted audio to put on in their background. That way they could, have more viewers. Because if they had the who's who of ufology, it would get them that. Well, essentially, I changed the name to my own, and it's been Dr. J Radio Live ever since.
When you started to look into some of the UFO phenomena, and you said that you, from a very early age, just knew innately, apparently, that we weren't alone. Did you have any theories as to, A, who's visiting us, B, where they're coming from, and C, what they're here for?
Oh, I could absolutely tell you that. Okay, first of all, they're coming from all over the place. Interstellar, intergalaxy, intergalactic, and interdimensional. Now, first of all, you got to remember this. We have the space-time continuum, but what affects it? Gravity. If you can affect gravitational change on the space-time continuum, you eventually create time travel. I've never really believed in it because I couldn't figure out the, make up for the grandfather paradox. However, paying attention to PBS and Brian Greene and listening to the singularity and string theory, it really makes sense that there's just multiple dimensions out there. I mean, on this dimension right now, you could be doing some other profession, and you two might not even know each other. And so, essentially, they're coming from all over the place. But what Bob Lazar said in 1988, after working at Area 51, what he came out, and when he got busted, so surprisingly, they never threw him in jail or silenced him, probably because, he's probably alive because he went public and they just ridiculed him. He was only allowed to examine the where they're sitting, and he couldn't see the top and the bottom. He had to hang down, he said, and there was 3 pipes, like 3 foot long, like a foot diameter, and then with a shorter pipe connecting it. And they were all universally pivoted. And so what they would do is, if you think of an airplane traveling with thrust behind it, it's going forward, right? But instead, think about pointing in any direction you want, and that's downward, which is why in low-speed mode, these craft over Earth are very unstable because gravity is already pulling them down to Earth. But then again, they fly with 3 things, but that's probably what explains all the crashes. Another theory is that they're just us from the future. And again, so we have both. I mean, think about how many planets there are. Another great story. I mean, I also, like I do, I've done documentaries, I've researched, and like I said, I have some incredible stories. But one of them was about this Boy Scout group. They were camping the Catalina Islands, and they said at night from the between the harbor, Los Angeles or Long Beach Harbor, and the islands, they saw 2 giant balls, black balls, rise up from the sea. And it sort of like opened some opening and all this different craft. And they said there was approximately 200 of them. And they were shaped from everything from discs to squares to rectangles to triangles to pyramids to orbs. And he said one of them looks like just a triangle, but every time, and it was surrounded by 2 discs, and every time it would try to fly up, it would make some weird noise and crash. And then just after 8 hours, they all went back in underwater. And there's actually a really good video about that where I interviewed the children about that. There's also a really great person, if you guys ever should, I'll introduce you for the show. It's Robert Vandenbroek. This guy is, he is definitely some sort of, he's been tested under scientific conditions, and it really proves a lot, which even as a lawyer, this evidence I just can't deny. So under controlled conditions, people have filmed him, and he'll lose track of what they're saying, and then people will appear next to him. For instance, this sounds really bizarre, but it's true, because my co-host in London, who we broadcast together, he's in his studio there, and I'm in my studio in Los Angeles. He's right now in Amsterdam with this guy named Robert Vandenbroek. And what happened is he just had this feeling that he wanted to go to a field. And so he went, and he said that there was like an egg-shaped thing that was really bright. So he got off his moped, and he walked to it, and out came 2 like balls of like light. And they turned into essentially grays with tentacles. And he got really scared. And then he said he felt an like oversensing feeling of love and warmth and all that. And so they tried to shake his hand, and then he got scared, even more fear he felt. And he just felt more love. He touched it, and then all of a sudden they like just floated up to the craft, and he hears like plop, plop, plop around him, and then he's got these tentacles. So they're all locked up in his fridge, but my co-host just brought them to me. Jaime Masson will send one to Italy, one to Spain, one to Mexico, and then I'm going to get a piece over here. And I have a laboratory where I used to test the alien implants from Dr. Roger Lear. So they're really all over the place. It just depends on which ones you want to talk about or which ones you want to know. But I've come to the conclusion that that's the case.
I want to kind of shift gears a little bit here, and we're going to come back to some of those stories that you were talking about in just a moment. But how did you get your start in radio?
Excuse me?
How did you get your start in radio?
Okay, in radio. Okay, that was it. I started working with Third Phase of the Moon, and so because I had known all the big guests, I would bring them on for them to do videos. And once they used to ask me to write questions for them, and for me, I don't believe in questions as a host, but so I wrote them the questions that I've always wanted to be answered. So they started to like them, and then we did documentaries where they co-produced it and they edited it, but I really produced it, filmed, directed it, and two of them were filmed by someone else, but I filmed the third one. And they did the editing, had their own opening because, of course, they have the largest YouTube channel. So they recognized that I can really ask questions, and I was very knowledgeable on this subject. So from that shifted on to where they were doing a radio show, and then I just wanted to do one on my own. And it was sort of fell into my lap by accident in that sense, where I started on Revolution Radio, and after the third show, there was a listener vote to put me in prime time. I stayed there for a while. Then I moved to Dark Matter Radio when it was called that. And that's when I got, a cold call asking if I could be Art Bell's producer. So I said I would only do it as long as it doesn't interfere with my show. So turns out my show was right before his.
Let's hold the Art Bell story till the next hour. So the show that you were doing that you started, was that an internet radio show? Is that what we're talking about?
It was, but even in the beginning, Revolution Radio broadcasts in 11 states right now.
Oh,
so from the beginning, from the get-go, internet radio when I was with Third Phase of the Moon, but when I started doing my own Third Phase of the Moon radio, that was already from the get-go in 14 states.
Nice. All right.
Now I'm global.
All right, so let's do this. We're going to take a break here. When we come back, let's get into some of the guests that you've had on your show. The list is quite interesting. I'd like to see some of the ones that you felt were most striking, most memorable, or maybe most surprising. And
you're going to find the new one surprising the most. Yeah,
that's great.
For sure.
Right.
When we get back, absolutely.
All right, if you have a question for our guest, Dr. J, or myself, or JV, give us a shout. The phone number is 844-687-7669. Again, toll free at 844-687-7669. You're listening to Jason and JV on Beyond Reaiity Radio. We'll be back after this.
Maybe I remember 1985.
It was a great year. I mean, I love that year. I was 14.
It was something special going on that year for you?
That's the year I met my wife.
Oh, very cool. Okay.
Yeah. She was in 7th. I was in 8th grade.
That's really nice. That's sweet. We'll have to play that song more often in honor of that.
Well, we actually play it here all the time. But no, but it's a great song because he touches, when did Ozzy become an actor and all this. It's just it's a great song.
Right.
It touches all that stuff.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. It's Beyond Reaiity Radio. The phone number is 844-687-7669 if you would like to join our discussion. We're talking with Dr. J. He's a radio host and also a UFO researcher. His website is Dr. J, the letter J, that is, drjradiolive.com. And, before we went to break, we were talking a little bit about your entry into radio, Dr. J. You've had a lot of really interesting guests. This is about a 5-minute segment here, maybe a little less. Let's talk about some of those guests. Who are some of the people that you really enjoyed having on your program the most?
Oh, geez, this is just a few. But Michael Dukakis, Senator Gravel, Dr. Edgar Mitchell before he passed away, astronaut Story Musgrave, of course, I've had FBI, DIA, CIA, NSA, Secret Service, the Honorable Paul Hellyer, former Defense Minister of Canada, Jack Osborne, Sean Stone, the band Hollywood Undead, Trevor Bell, the left-hand pitcher from the Angels who just retired because of an injury, Jesse Marcel Jr., the last person to ever hold the Roswell wreckage alive when he was a child, because his father was the one who called out to the scene. Dr. Roger Lear, who did alien implants. The Gambino crime family, I've had 3 members from there. I'm working on Sammy the Bull Gravano and John Gotti, which, I've already set that up. There's a lot I've set up, and anything. It started as a paranormal show, but really anything goes at this point. Anything that I find fits, and that's what's probably brought more listeners. And I have a very sophisticated protection for people who leave their name and their website. And it's always a legit, or not website, email. And it's always a legit email because there are always questions and comments that come with it. So, they also, I get their country from my co-host who can look at the ISBN and figure out where it's from. So I was blown away to find out that people, even at McMurdo, were listening to it. But we have stations, globally, broadcasting the show. And we're in 27 states because of Late Night in the Midlands. There are multiple networks. So two things I'm really working on. You're not going to believe this. Well, first of all,
hold on. Slow down. We got to stay. I want to stay on the guests topic right now before we go to the top of the hour. We'll talk about what's coming up down the road, but I'm curious about Michael Dukakis because, did he have come to you as a guest about UFOs, or was just because he was a fascinating? So you brought politics into the show as well. Okay.
Yes, but I did have a United States senator when everybody, especially the federal government, the Department of Justice, was trying to apply the espionage, like Snowden, who's someone I'm working to try to get on. And he was the only government official that said he was a true American hero. And that is viral. Just Google Senator calls Snowden hero, and you'll hear it. I mean, it just blows your mind away. So there are politicians that have crossed over. I've gotten some congressmen and women and others who don't want to. My mayor doesn't want to, although I've asked him, tried to catch him off guard. So his eyes kind of said it, but his mouth didn't say it. So, unless you know to read body language, you can only infer at that.
So of the people that you've had on the program related to the UFO topic itself, or maybe just the paranormal topics themselves, who has given you something that may have been the most surprising bit of information that you've gotten while doing an interview on air? Or maybe just a couple people. We've got about a minute left here in this segment.
Robert Vandenbroek. Robert Vandenbroek was a great one. Linda Moulton Howe always blows everybody away. Stanton Friedman, Godfather Ufology.
Yeah,
Dr. Jacobs, Abductions. And the two people that Kaczynski, who I'm trying to get on at some point. That'll be something interesting. There's just so many people. Jack Osborne had a great story to tell about an experience his friend had, and he's really, really into it. I'm going to reveal this to everyone. His sister was an abductee. So, Jack, I'm sorry if that offends you, but you've already told enough people. So, there you go.
Well, I don't think you have to worry about that. Jack's a personal friend. Jack's a personal friend of mine. I just did a TV show with him over in the UK, and he's a huge. What?
With his dad?
No, I just did a TV show with Jack over in the UK about a month and a half ago, and he's a huge paranormal buff, let alone just UFOs and everything else. It's always things that have totally intrigued him.
Just a quick question before we have to jump to break, and I just need a quick answer here. You did interview Erich von Däniken, right?
Absolutely. I just interviewed him last week.
Were you impressed? Were you impressed by Erich?
I've always been impressed with Erich. He's been my guest. A lot of these people I've known for.
Yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit more on the other side of the break, because I'm very curious about your impression of Erich.
All right, so the phone number is 844-687-7669. Again, toll free at 844-687-7669. You're listening to Jason and JV on Beyond Reaiity Radio. We'll be back after this. It's Thursday on the West Coast, Friday on the East Coast. Many are stuck somewhere in between. Welcome to Beyond Reaiity Radio with myself, Jason Hawes, and the always awesome JV Johnson.
It's a double guest night. We like to have two guests. We had two guests. Was it last night we brought on Keith Komos to talk about the Golden State Killer case and the arrest that was made in that case?
Yeah, absolutely. And then we had our other guests come on right after, and tonight, again, we're doing two guests.
Yeah, so later in the program, we'll have Dr. Misse on, and again, we've said it a few times already, but we'll stress it. His story is very, very inspirational, and it'll motivate you, it'll inspire you, plus he's doing some really great things that you're going to want to support, I'm pretty sure.
Well, and it's funny because, like I said, and we'll get into a story when we have him on, but he is legally blind, but he's just one of the best out there. And geez, he's a personal friend of mine, but he's also one of my doctors, just because I have that much faith and trust in him. So just a great guy. Make sure you tune in.
So we'll have him on for the last part of the program. But right now we're talking with Dr. J. Dr. J is a radio host and a UFO researcher. His website is drjradiolive.com. We were talking about some of the guests that Dr. J has had on his program. They've covered the gamut from political conversations to UFO to other paranormal phenomena, and I specifically brought up Erich von Däniken. Of course, Erich von Däniken is the gentleman who wrote the book Chariot of the Gods, which, along with the TV show In Search Of, was probably one of the most inspirational things for me when I was very, very young, that made me start questioning the world around me, and it made me start looking into these paranormal topics that we talk about every night on the show.
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody has that catalyst which really thrusted them into this field, and that's why people are listening to the show. That's why people investigate, and that's why people are so interested in this topic.
So let's bring Dr. J back in. Tell us about Erich von Däniken. I've talked with him personally a few times. We haven't had an opportunity to have him on the show, but you've had an opportunity to interview him. First of all, what do you think of his theories? And then secondly, what do you think of him as a subject for an interview?
Well, first of all, he's just like all my guests. They're friends. They're people that I hang out with on a regular basis, except the people who live distantly. I call them, they call me. So he's someone, like I said, who I've been having on the show at least 3-4 times a year since 2012. So this year is his 50th anniversary. Great guest. And let me tell you something. Okay, if you go back a few thousand years, right? So you have the ancient Greeks and the Romans who stole everything from the Greeks. That's why everything looked the same. And the Egyptians. There weren't many people that could read. So the people that could read were essentially the monks. And if they didn't write, what the kings wanted them, they would be killed because there were so few of them. Now, do you really think the very first thing you're going to write in your entire life, if you want to leave written message for humanity, is some mythical story? No. They were describing what they saw. And this goes all the way to Jesus. I mean, if you talk to alien abductees now, women who have not had sex, and then all of a sudden they're pregnant, and then their babies are removed sometime in their early second trimester, that's, I think, what happened to the Virgin Mary. The point is all those gods, it just makes so much sense. I mean, Alexander the Great, they had flying shields and they were shooting arrows at them. What started with him is, I had this interview up. It's on my YouTube page. And by the way, everything is under one name. The name of the show, Dr. J Radio Live, DRJ Radio Live. That's all you need to know for everything from Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Tumblr, Pinterest, Facebook, iTunes, domain, Gmail. I mean, you name it. So you could hear Erich von Däniken start. He was in a seminary and to become a priest, and he was reading a passage in the Bible. And the Bible's full of UFO stories, by the way. And he was reading that passage where, God had to shoot a wall to destroy it for it to be conquered. And he says, if my God is so mighty and powerful and created the universe and created us, why would he need such a conventional way to do this? And he looked further, such as what happened with Ezekiel. I mean, you have these craft that can go in any direction and up and down, and creatures with 4 faces. And he started to realize these people were describing what they saw. So if you think thousands of years ago, when all you have is a spear, they're not in the technological era we are now, which is not the industrial era. That's long over. But if you think about what they had, the limited access of knowledge, I think this, and you think about this too. Pyramids, why would structures being separated? Because if Pangea broke off into separate places and each humanoid or Homo sapien walked different parts of the earth, why do they have the same architecture? Why do they all believe in gods and God's giving them knowledge? I mean, look at the American Indians. So Erich von Däniken is definitely a good guest, and I'd be more than happy to introduce you. That's great. All right, let's go to our phone lines. We've had a couple of people waiting here. This is Blake calling in from Hawaii. Hey, Blake, welcome to the program.
Hey, Jason, JV, love the show. And, Jason, you've been a big influence. It's Blake Cousins from Third Phase Moon. We ran a little YouTube channel after we're watching your Ghost Hunter adventures. We're like, well, maybe we could do that in a YouTube form. And then now we're up to about 500,000 subscribers. But I got to say, Dr. J, man, he really helped us out back in the day. He said to Dr. J, hey, look, Dr. J, we need to talk to the top ufologists out there in the world. And you know what? Dr. J actually delivered big time. Anybody we wanted, he would get them on. It'd be like we're little kids in a candy store. We're like, I couldn't believe, as being a young child interested in UFOs, and now I'm able to speak to these guys. such as Erich von Däniken. So, yeah, actually, Dr. J is a wealth of information and resource to these people around the world. It's quite incredible.
Oh, that's awesome to hear.
Yeah, and these guys that I work with, these are, I'm producers for Third Phase of the Moon. And like I said, that's the world's largest YouTube channel, and that's how I got my start in radio. Thank you, Blake.
Yeah, Blake, thanks for that call and those kind words. Let's go to Bill in Florida. Hey, Bill, welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you.
What's on your mind?
I was worried about the implants. I spent some time in northern Alaska on a military radar site, quite often on a mountaintop by myself. But February 83, I developed strange muscle contractions on the left side of my body, arm, legs, ribs, so bad my bed would shake at night. I had to leave that June and resign my position. I was a radar technician. And I got skull x-rays because I was having headaches after I got back home to Florida. And I got to look at the x-rays. It showed a metal rod in my right sinus cavity about the thickness and the length of a nickel. I was curious about that, if that's showing up for anyone else.
Let's just make sure we understand, Bill. You say you didn't have a procedure that would have put that there, so it just appeared mysteriously, is what you're saying.
Right. I've no explosion in my military career, 20 years, no explosions. I didn't get out of the United States.
Did they, after seeing that on the x-ray, did they try to remove it? Is it still there?
No. I saw a doctor there, and they said they didn't know how it got there, and they weren't interested in trying to get it out.
So it's still there?
It's still there.
As far as you know, okay.
And weirdly, usually in January, February, just about every winter month, I get kind of angry. That's all I can say, for no reason. I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, no, let's get Dr. J's take on that. You've probably spoken to people, Dr. J, that have talked about implants, whether they have them themselves or not. Is this something that you've heard before?
Many times. The only thing I could say is, on top of showing me x-rays, get it removed. And if you want to, I will get it tested where the E17 that Dr. Lear removed, where actually Jack Osborne was also present in the waiting room watching on TV for the 17th removal. That's where you could see my two documentaries on Third Phase of the Moon on YouTube. One is called Alien Human Project, and the other is called Alien Human Project Part 2. That's essentially me interviewing him, and that's when Blake and Brent, the Cousins brothers from Third Phase of the Moon, really saw that I could interview people and not just deliver people, and that's how I started my show, Third Phase of the Moon Radio. And like I said, I had autonomy. But I would just say, I mean, if it's you can get it out. And then when I see it and have it tested at the same laboratories or other laboratories and can prove, there's a few things from the past ones. First of all, they're magnetic when they're in you. The moment you take them out, it's like your body's a battery anyway from the electricity. They don't work anymore. The other thing is you can't cut them. And the third thing would be, at least from the 17 that Dr. Lear had, and to tell you the truth, his wife and daughter still have possession of one that I can access anytime. And that's the one you'll see in the video. It's pretty gnarly looking. And the third thing, is, which is the most bizarre, is they're sending a signal to deep space that's consistent with deep space. I mean, nowhere in our solar system is this signal being received. I mean, it is like literally like, light years away. So that's the part that really threw me for a loop as a lawyer.
Yeah,
I need the evidence, and I believe I found it.
All right, hold on one sec. Bill, thank you so much for that phone call. And if anything changes with that, please give us a call back. We'd really love to hear more about that. Listen, we're going to go to break right now. When we come back, we're going to change the subject because we don't have much time left with Dr. J. We're going to talk about his time with Art Bell.
All right, you're listening to Jason and JV on Beyond Reaiity Radio. We'll be back after this.
It's hard to cut away from this song before the na-na-na-na part, where that's really kicks into gear there.
Yeah, well, it's just a great song.
It is a great song. Was that an 1985 song, I think? It was around there, 84 maybe, from the Breakfast Club?
Breakfast Club, yeah.
Yeah. Welcome back to the show. It's Beyond Reaiity Radio, Jason and JV. Our guest is Dr. J. We've got a few more minutes left with him, and I want to spend this time, Dr. J, talking about your time with Art Bell. We only have about 4 minutes here, so how did you get introduced to him, and tell us about the work you did with him?
It was another thing that fell on my lap. In January 2015, it was a cold call asking to be his producer, and I said, as long as it doesn't interfere with my show. I asked how long he'd be on, and, 6 months, a few years, whichever. It only lasted 5 months. And he does radio different than I do. He wants questions in advance. So after the first 6 weeks are the guests I booked for him. After that, I just gave him the guests, and Heather Wade started, getting the questions and all that stuff. But he was a great guy. He tell you the truth, even privately, he speaks the same way he does. And may he rest in peace. I spoke to him hours before he died, and if he wasn't for him, none of us would be here today.
Well, and JV and I say that all the time. I mean, Art really was, he was a groundbreaker, and he set the stage for everybody.
I had never heard a show prior to that either. So that was the crazy part, is when he just called me, talked about guests. So anyhow, that was Art. But
tell us,
real quick, can I tell you what I'm working on for one at a time?
I want to ask one more question about Art, though, because there was a lot of mystery surrounding the later months of his life. Was it mystery just because he was a private person, or was it mystery because there was something really going on?
Something was really going on when he was on air. 2 people shot at his house. One time he had to cancel the show because it was while he was on air. Another night it was before he went on air. And there was no mystery about his death. He was perfectly fine. He didn't go out that day, spend the time with his wife, Erin. Erin, this is for you, and Asia, a little daughter, and 10-month-old Christian. And I talked to him after he left me a voicemail, and then he went to bed and never woke up. So there's no foul play, no mystery on how he passed.
All right, so what things are you working on?
Like I said, you wouldn't believe it, but the smartest person in the world, according to IQs, which is Theodore Kaczynski, better known as the Unabomber. By the end of the year, I will have a full 60 minutes of him, which I will release on air. I got myself a press pass to the White House. Uri Geller is this week, as well as Richard Spence. Hope Hicks, from formerly in the White House, she was the one that got me in touch with Trump. And you just stick around for a few years, and you will see by the end of this year, if not early next year, you will see the Prime Minister of Greece, Canada, and U.S. presidents that I have locked under my little seal here. So that's it. But I also want to give a shout-out to my co-host, Johnny Webb, and, of course, my webmaster, Miami Tom is what he goes by. Lou Sheehan, another lawyer I work with, and he's also part of the show. And, of course, Third Phase of the Moon and the networks that I'm on. PSN, Late Night, The Midlands, Dark Matter, where Art Bell was, and Midnight in the Desert. It still is with Heather Wade now. And also Pulse Talk Radio Network in the United Kingdom. Deprogrammed Radio in, of course, also the UK. And thank God I have a radio host in South Korea who broadcasts the show all the time, as well as a friend in Australia. And there's listeners that take about 40% of my show, and they would be in Iceland, Germany, South Korea, Australia, and, literally some of the places in the East, which would be surprising. I mean, I've gotten calls live on air from Ukraine, from Tehran. I mean, I was blown away to receive footage from there. So, that's what I wanted to shout out to. Well, and Robert Morningstar, who's been a great guest of mine and a great host and a great friend. And, that's it.
Well, Dr. J, thanks so much for coming and hanging out with us, and we look forward to talking to you again at some point.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Have a great night now. All right, so we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to have a close friend of ours, Dr. Misse, on, So make sure you tune in. You listen to Jason and JV on Beyond Reaiity Radio. We'll be back after this. Hey, welcome back to Beyond Reaiity Radio with Jason and JV, and we've got a good treat coming up here.
Yeah, there are certain people that you meet in life whose story is just inspirational beyond all belief, and those types of stories are the types of stories that people who just go through their day not really appreciating what they've got and where they've come. They hear these stories and they realize, wow, I have a lot to be thankful for. Plus, they're inspired by hard work, dedication, and just the ability to overcome obstacles that are thrown at you, by no fault of your own. These things, hurdles end up in front of you, and you have to jump them, and you have to move on.
Well, go ahead.
I was going to say, and this next guest has done all that and more.
Even beyond that, I met our next guest, through my wife. He was taking care of one of my daughters, and when my wife first informed me about him, strangely, I was a little concerned, and we'll get into that. But since he's become a good friend of mine, I've been highly impressed, and the guy is just amazing. Hey, welcome to the show, Ray.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
And of course, we are talking with Dr. Raymond Misse, and not just a doctor, but somebody who's overcome so many things in life to become a very successful doctor, plus a successful businessman.
Absolutely. So, Ray, welcome to the show, and thanks for coming on. And you and I talk all the time, and you're just amazing. You truly are.
Oh no, well, thanks for having me, Jay, and thank you for your friendship, belief, and I'm humbled by your interest in me. Thank you.
Well, thank you. How about telling all our listeners out there who you are and what you do?
Well, I'm a gastroenterologist, board certified, and I've been practicing in Rhode Island now for 23 years. My goal in life was always to be maybe a baseball player or an athlete growing up there, but I was struck by a car when I was young, shattered were my right leg and knee, and my dreams of ever playing professional sports. And as a child, I thought, geez, my life is over. This is terrible. What am I going to do in life? There's nothing besides sports or baseball, I thought. And, one of my surgeries, I was sitting in the x-ray department, and a group of doctors came in. And one doctor actually sat down next to me at the end of the interview and spent some time with me. And what he did was he took the time to sit next to me. He then took one hand and placed it on the knee that was going to be operated on the next day and began drawing the procedure on that leg. And immediately I felt the power of his touch. And I knew then that this is what I wanted to do in life. I wanted to take care of people. I wanted to make a difference in their life, such as that simple touch was by that Dr. Feta many years ago in New York City at the time of a very big operation I was having. So I kind of set my goals to becoming a doctor. I had to work hard. Academics at first didn't come easy to me. My advisor at Siena College in upstate New York said after my first semester, geez, Ray, you may need to think your plan here. Your grades aren't going to be good enough to get into medical school. And I thought back to the power of that Dr. Touch by, the touch by Dr. Feta, and I know I didn't want to give up on that dream. So I did whatever I could to get into medical school. I buckled down my studies. I did volunteer research in New York City with the doctors that actually operated on me. And to the surprise of many, I got interviews to medical school. I didn't get in that first year, but I didn't want to give up on that dream. When I re-enrolled and tried to get back into school, at one of the interviews, one of the doctors said, hey, Ray, if you don't get into medical school this year, do you have any other plans? And I looked him in the eye and I said, I guess I'll see you again next year. Well, 6 days later, I got my acceptance letter at the New England College of Osteopathic Medicine in Maine and have never looked back. And I'm so glad I never gave up on my dreams because I just love what I do.
Well, and it's amazing enough because your first dream of being a sports player, of course, was shattered. And then this being your second dream, hearing that from a teacher and others, I mean, that had to be pretty close to shattering that second dream as well.
Well, it was. And I had to dig down deep because, it's easy to take the advice of people you respect and say, hey, maybe it's just not going to happen. But there's something within each and every one of us, and I had to listen to my instincts. But I also knew that, I had the faith that this is what I had to do. But, without work, without some work on my part and labor, it wasn't going to happen. So I needed to make some changes in my approach to my studies. But at the same token, I had to prove to people in the community that I'm going to make a good doctor, And I did. I kind of buckled down and got into school and did very well. I excelled academically in medical school, but I think it's then because I was on the track and I kind of was all set.
Ray, at what point did you start practicing medicine? How old were you at that time?
When I graduated medical school, I was like 28 years old. But by the time I finished 1-year internship, 3-year internal medicine residency, and a 2-year GI fellowship, I was in my early 30s before I went into practice for the first time.
So you started practicing medicine in your early 30s, and then it wasn't long after that you faced another gigantic hurdle. Tell us about that.
Correct. So at the age of 38, I actually began experiencing some hearing loss. And this was at a time when several other nurses at our hospital here in Rhode Island experienced sudden hearing loss in a single ear. I had bilateral hearing loss, and I'll spare some of the details, but I was diagnosed with bilateral hearing loss and required hearing aids at that point to hear clearly. And a lot of what I do is being a good listener. You know, I always tell the medical students or residents with me, if you ask the right questions, the patients are actually going to tell you what's wrong with them. So, you know, my hearing was very important. Just on, when I thought it could get no worse, at the age of 40, 2 days actually before I turned 40, I was actually pulling out of my driveway, and I couldn't see the stop sign at the top of my street. Several months prior to this, I actually was having difficulty reading small print, and I kept on thinking, geez, everybody says when you turn 40, you need reading glasses. Well, it wound up being something more than just getting reading glasses. The news I got later that day was the fact that I had been declared legally blind. I lost the central vision in both my eyes. And suddenly my world got turned upside down. It got very dark, so to speak. And it was a pretty significant moment in my life.
Well, that's two major blows. Your hearing, and now, especially as a doctor, okay, you can get by with hearing aids, but going blind, I mean, losing your vision as a doctor, it's near impossible to overcome.
Well, I was told by many early on that I shouldn't practice medicine. But I fought so hard to become a doctor. I love caring for patients, and I love that interaction with people, taking care of them. And, I needed to do, well, early on, I was in shock, of course. My world got rocked upside down. To this day, I still don't know how I got through the summer of 2001, but I really do think it's thanks to my friends, more importantly, my family, and certainly my faith. I got through that summer, but I held on to anything I could. As I was going through testing, which included going to hospitals not only in Boston, here in Rhode Island, but go out to the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, I went to work every day. And although I couldn't see small print, didn't know what was happening to me, I had my secretaries read charts to me. I could still talk to people, still examine patients. I was referring patients out to other individuals to have their procedures done until everything settled out. In February of 2002, Jay, I found out that my professional relationship was going to be over. And suddenly, my world got awfully darker. But I remembered back at an eye appointment I had with a doctor in Connecticut, and walking at his visit, he said, Ray, it might be a matter of when, not if, you could ever do procedures again on patients. Because I do endoscopies and colonoscopies. Now, when I walked out of that visit, my wife thought he was nuts. How can you give this hope to a blind person? But I guess I never let go of that, because when I found out that I would be practicing alone, I called that doctor up, and I asked him desperately, I think, what did you mean by that? And he was thinking out loud, and he said, well, Ray, if you sit in front of a large screen, we could probably correct your vision as if you were wearing glasses. And that's what we did. We searched that out. And I'll be honest with you, nobody gave me a chance. A group from Colorado who re-credentials blind physicians happened to be in the state of Rhode Island at that time. And they actually spoke to the Physicians' Health Committee, and without meeting me, said, well, if Ray can meet certain criteria that we've dealt with other doctors, not vision loss to this degree, then maybe he would be considered a safe practitioner. Suddenly, word got out on the street that I might be getting back the ability to do procedures. This committee said I should do 30 procedures in front of several doctors that do what I do, and 60 of my patients lined up within a 2-week period and volunteered to be my first patient.
Oh, that's amazing.
Says a lot about you.
And it was amazing because, at a time when I didn't believe in myself, I had so many losses. I lost my father shortly before this. I lost my hearing. I lost my vision. I was afraid to take a chance. But when these people started believing in me, it gave me the faith. It gave me some confidence that, I got to try this. If I went to my grave without trying to get my career back, I think I would have been disappointed. So I had to go for it.
Yeah. Well, and to top it all off, your business partner sort of ended the relationship, but in return, it was one of those things that will give you more drive, but is hurtful as well.
Well, yes, and the people who mattered in my life did, Jay, and that's the key.
And I'm a believer really that matters.
Everything happens for a reason, and God put this person in my life for a reason and then took that person out of my life. But when I did my TED Talk recently, I said the quote, the kick in the stomach I received was the kick in the pants I needed to fulfill my potential in life. So it was almost like that had to happen, for me to dig down deep to say, I got to try this.
That's a really important point you just made. Many people would take that kick in the stomach and lie down in the fetal position and not respond. The people that have truly a sense of greatness inside them, whether they recognize it or not, take it the way you did and use it as a motivating factor to become better, to become resilient, and to turn, if you will, to use a cliche, lemons into lemonade.
And I think part of that is that, I look at, and how I live my life now when I'm faced with adversity, because, life is hard, Jay. And when you look at this, you say, life is hard. And now when I look at a challenge, I kind of sit back and say, okay, what am I to learn from this? How can I grow from this? Back in the day, it would be like, poor me. Hey, when this happened to me back in February 2002, it was poor me. But then over time, I realized that I can't sit on the pity pot. I had a responsibility to the patients in our community. I had a responsibility to my family. I had 2 young daughters at home. But more importantly, I had a responsibility to myself to fulfill my potential in life, and I had to try this. First thing in the morning, I say the serenity prayer, Jay. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So every morning, I accept my low vision and hearing. I accept that. I move forward, and everything else is good.
You didn't stop there, Ray. You actually, in addition to your busy practice, decided to get into the business world. And not only did you get into the business world, but you came up with a product that is unique and somewhat novel. And you're using that vehicle as a way to help give back to others, particularly children who are suffering from a similar affliction. Tell us about that.
Right. So, back in 2002, I didn't know where my life or career was, as I said earlier. But I always felt that responsibility. And one of the things I do on a daily basis is I promote fiber to all my patients. I take fiber supplements. I promote high-fiber diets for the 20-plus diseases that can be helped or alleviated. So in the time of despair back in 2001 and 2002, you can kind of say I turned to the ice cream bowl. I'm an ice cream fanatic. I love premium ice cream. And I started thinking that 97% of Americans don't get enough fiber for wellness, but then 90% of American households buy ice cream. I said, well, if I can't get my career back, why don't we put the fiber in ice cream as a vehicle to allow patients to get to their recommended daily allowance of fiber in a fun way? So I get my career back, as we just discussed, thanks to technology and drive. But I kept on talking about this ice cream because I still eat ice cream. And I think my wife got tired of it and said, Ray, will you just go do it? So with the help of a product developer, thousands of taste tests, we came up with Seriously Good Ice Cream. And we launched our product approximately a year ago as we speak.
And you guys everybody out there can actually check out the ice cream or the website at seriouslygoodco.com. And make sure you check it out. I got to say, I'm extremely happy for you. I'm impressed with everything you've been able to do. You're just an amazing guy.
Well, Jay, thank you. And so are you and everything that you've accomplished. We're all in this together. And, let's not forget about, the ice cream. And I hope my story here, I did a TED Talk recently, hoping that people will find that, we all fear change, and courage is being able to face your fears, fear change. And the other thing is that to get to this point, I wouldn't be able to do this without technology. And, part of the ice cream, which we believe is an ice cream with benefits, promoting wellness, promoting fiber, less sugar, but more importantly is to donate part of our profits to groups that help blind children. Without technology, I wouldn't be here today. That's a gift, but I know that a lot of that technology costs money. So what I'd like to do is hopefully my story to inspire children to never give up on their dreams and these are children who are visually impaired. The story can fit for any type of disability or anybody living life on life's terms, but also to possibly provide some hope and technology that kids can fulfill their potential. So this is something that I'm very excited about. Like you said before, when God gives you lemons, you give lemonade. I'd like to think if God gives you low vision, you make ice cream, correct?
Well, there you go.
Ray, this is it's a fascinating story and a fabulous story at the same time. Jay gave the web address out for the ice cream, but is this available in stores? How do people get a hold of this?
So right now we're located throughout Rhode Island in 14 supermarkets, which you can find on the website. We would love your listeners and the listeners that are listening to this program to go to our website. And if you look at a locations page, there's a call to action section that if the customers would love to try this, or your listeners, I should say, you can actually print up a sheet of paper and bring it to your local grocer. And we would love to get the buzz out there and spread throughout the region there. Right now, we're in 14 supermarkets in Rhode Island, Monroe Dairy. We're in southern Massachusetts and in northern Connecticut, but we hope to grow.
Do you see?
Recently, just to give you a thing, I get credentialed every several years, and this past year, the state of Rhode Island said, "Ray, it's time to do this, but we would like to bring in a physician who doesn't know you. Too many people want to see you succeed locally." So they flew in a surgeon from the Philadelphia area. He spent the day with me and did 13 cases with me and observed 13 cases. And at the end of the day, he commented to the state that he commended my technique, and at the bottom of the letter commented to our chief medical officer that I was seeing things that many of his colleagues would have missed. So this technology, I think because I know my records are always being reviewed, I concentrate, I take my time. The technology corrects my vision loss, and I think I'm a better doctor as a result of all these experiences and all this technology.
That's amazing. It really is.
It really is. Again, the story is so inspirational, and what you're doing with the ice cream is not only innovative, but it's also admirable given the fact that you're assisting children with blindness with some of the proceeds. It's terrific. We're kind of short on time here, but this story is fascinating, and I'm hoping that you'll continue to stay in touch with us and hopefully come back on the program and give us an update because this is inspirational and as I said, fascinating.
Well, Jay, I'm so grateful for the invitation to be on the show. Like they said, if you want something, sometimes you have to give it away first.
Well, and you're a friend, and we talk all the time as well, so we'll definitely have to have you back on and talk more about this. But everybody out there, make sure you check out Seriously Good Co. That's seriouslygoodco.com. And, go to the location list, print that out, and see about getting it in your area. But thanks so much for coming on, Ray.
Okay, and we're also on Facebook, and we're trying to do some medical updates to educate people on what we're doing. So we try to update a couple of times a month. So we'd love to have more followers. So if people and your viewers can like us and share us, that would be great.
Yeah, JV and I'll actually post that on the Beyond Reaiity Radio Facebook page, and we'll get it out there on ours as well. And that's at Seriously Good CO, right? On Facebook.
You got it.
All right, Ray. Thanks so much for coming on and hanging out with us, and we'll talk soon, and we'll have you back on in the near future.
I look forward to it, and you guys have a great day. Have a seriously good day.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, we ran long. We got to jump to break here. We'll come back and wrap things up. It's Beyond Reaiity Radio. That's going to do it for tonight. Thank you to everybody for joining us. Thank you to both of our guests tonight. Tomorrow night's a best of program. We'll be back with you live on Monday night. It's Beyond Reaiity Radio with Jason and JV.
Beyond Reaiity Radio is hosted by Jason Hawes and JV Johnson and produced by Alexandria Johnson and Slick Eddie Edwards for Entercom Radio. Beyond Reaiity Radio is distributed by Westwood One Radio Networks. Stop by our Facebook page and say hello. Follow the hosts on Facebook as well. For Jason Hawes, follow at jasonhawes.taps. For JV Johnson, follow at JVJ Paranormal. If you'd like to be a guest on Beyond Reaiity Radio or you have a suggestion for a guest, contact Slick Eddie Edwards at slickeddieedwards@gmail.com. Be sure to visit our chat room as well at beyondreaityradio.com. Thanks for listening.